Well, this is a nice break from all those, quote, real story animations. You know, the ones that make me feel like a crossover between Bill Engvall and Oprah. You get a sign! You get a sign! You're all getting a sign! But now, we're diving into video game territory. Finally, something I care about. If I don't show anything in the video, it was either not noteworthy or something I agree with.
No, get out of the line!
But I've noticed another company partaking in a lot of these greedy practices without really receiving any sort of backlash like EA does. And it's Nintendo.
This is a very strange point to say Nintendo doesn't get any backlash. For some reason, he seems to think that nobody was criticizing Nintendo up until then. I'll respond to that later, because boy is this gonna come back to bite him.
No, get out of the line!
One of the huge things that people hated about EA was microtransactions. While Nintendo may not do this as blatantly as gambling with loot boxes, they do still have competitive games where they force you to pay if you want all the DLC characters. In other words, players can pay to unlock characters which may be better. The microtransactions aren't just cosmetics, and I think this would have a lot of people upset if this were an EA game.
This comes off as very nitpicky. That is what DLC is. If the character looks cool to you, then you can get it. But if it doesn't, you don't have to. You even admit in your own video it's not as bad as what EA does. Isn't the whole point of this video to compare Nintendo to EA and say they're just as bad? If you then say you don't like DLC, that's a fair opinion. But you cannot say it's a scam because you know exactly what you're getting, and you don't have to in order to enjoy the game. If EA did get hate for doing something like this, then that would just be blind hate and hating on EA because it's EA, which is not even good, even if the company is EA.
No, get out of the line!
Microtransactions. If we look at another Switch title, Animal Crossing, there's some really questionable decisions that Nintendo made. 1 island per Switch. Apparently this was to try and help avoid cheating, but come on. If you wanted 2 different islands, or if you have siblings or kids playing on the same Switch, well, you just couldn't. And this couldn't even be fixed by buying the game twice. To have access to 2 islands, you would have to buy a whole nother Switch.
I fail to see the problem here. This is how the Animal Crossing series has always been, and anyone who's even been vaguely familiar with the series knows that. Having 1 island per Switch really doesn't affect the game that much, even in multiplayer. I mean, you could have players having to switch things and argue stuff, but that's really more of the player's fault than the game's.
No, get out of the line!
Flack for releasing similar games all the time, but Nintendo kinda does this too.
This point is flat out ridiculous, for both EA and Nintendo. Of course their games are similar to each other. They're in different series. When other series, like for example Paper Mario, start stretching away from what made the original games great, there's outrage. But when they're similar, people just start complaining about it. You pick one. It cannot be both. Sorry for ranting right there. I just really wanted to complain about the gaming communities for a minute. But anyway, this point is really ridiculous because while the games may be similar, there's always a different mechanic introduced in each game that makes it different. Let's look at the Mario series, for example. Mario 64. The fact that the game was 3D was the gimmick. Super Mario Sunshine, the tropical atmosphere and flood. Galaxy, the traveling around the universe, the launch stars, the Lumas, and all that fantastic stuff. Mario 3D World, there's the cat suit and being able to play as 4 different characters. Super Mario Odyssey, the capture ability and the globe-trotting atmosphere. While these games may be similar in some ways, they're also different in many others that I won't be able to get into in this video. And that's just one series example.
Nintendo has definitely created amazing games that I love, but I think the quality of their content blinds a lot of people from their greediness.
Yes, I am. Wrong.
This just proves you have no idea what you're talking about. Even before the whole Etika and free Melee situations happened, people were criticizing a lot of Nintendo's actions. For example, shutting down fan projects, and I was criticizing them on this too. So, in the Joy-Con situation, people have been criticizing them. So to act like people just turn the other way when Nintendo does any bad business is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not saying that people like that don't exist, I'm just saying they're not the majority like you're painting them to be. In fact, Disney is way more iconic than Nintendo and also produces a lot of quality content. Yet, that doesn't stop people from criticizing them.
No, get out of the line!
Which really upsets me. It's the Shindu version of the game, so they took out the BLJ for some reason, and you can't even call Bowser gay anymore.
The reason they use the Shindu version of the game is quite simple. It's the most advanced version. In addition to removing glitches like the BLJs and the "So long, King Bowser," it's King, by the way. If you want to know why that was removed, check out Video Game Storytime's video on the matter. It's actually not for the reason you'd think. It also has the Rumble feature, and we never got it in America before this anyway. So if you're wondering why they use the Shindu version, the better question is, why wouldn't they use the Shindu version? To pass this off as a problem is completely ridiculous. In fact, I'd say this is far from a problem.
No, get out of the line!
Sunshine, you get better resolution, which makes the game look better, but now you can't play on a GameCube controller.
I think this speaks for itself.
No, get out of the line!
I get how this is nice for people who don't have access to the old consoles, but even then, why wouldn't they include Galaxy 2?
Well, the answer is quite simple. Storage. Despite people like you seeming to think you can just put whatever you want in a game, the truth is, games have limits to what they can have in them, even collections. So the most simple answer is they just simply didn't have enough storage to put Galaxy 2 in.
No, get out of the line!
Considering this age of remakes of such high quality that capture the vision of the original but bring it to today's standards, for example Resident Evil 2, Crash Bandicoot, and the upcoming Demon Souls, 3D All-Stars is just a huge letdown. Just compare it to Nintendo's own Super Mario All-Stars for the SNES, where the 8-bit Mario games were completely reworked with entirely new artwork and sound and new features.
This is a very unfair comparison. One is a ports of games, and the others are full-on remakes. This is the equivalent of comparing chips to popcorn. It just does not work. I think had not the rumors of full-on remakes of these games came out, then people would not be mad at 3D All-Stars. I'd say it's actually pretty obvious what this was going to be. Remember the fan project thing I mentioned earlier? Well, the one thing all those fan projects that got shut down all had in common is that later Nintendo had something else in the works. There were two Mario 64 projects. One was a PC port and the other was a full-on remake. Nintendo shut down the port, but they didn't pay attention to the remake. In fact, I'd say it was pretty obvious which one it was going to be. So yeah, that was the video. It's not as awful as those, quote, real story animations, but those at least can just be laughed at and be made fun of like that. This video just cannot. This just really feels like a video that was just trying to get views and nothing else. I'm not saying Nintendo is a perfect company or that they haven't made stupid decisions. In fact, I mentioned many of their stupid decisions a long ago, but to just compare them to EA of all people is absolutely ridiculous. But speaking of Nintendo criticism, stay tuned for a video where I actually do that, but for the treatment of one of their characters. See you guys later.